Hi, everyone. Happy Monday. I'll just let everyone trickle in. Let me know how everyone's doing today. I apologize that I look like a drowned rat. If you've never been here before, hi. Lovely to see you. And I do these lives every other week, and I like to always start us off with a little check-in. So let me know how you're doing. Hi, Trisha. So yeah, if you want to let me know where you are tuning in from, how you are feeling today, all of the things. Hi, Lisa. Lovely to see you. Hi, Vicky. Vicky is one of my regulars here. I love all of my regulars that just like pop in with me every other week. Again, as I said, I don't know if you heard me, but I apologize that I look a little bit like a drowned rat. I just washed my hair. Hi, Lisa. First time, Virginia. Welcome. I'm so glad to have you. So for anyone who has never met me before, hi, my name is Deborah Lee Smith, as it says right here on the screen. I am an actor, a filmmaker, and a mental health advocate located in Los Angeles. I also have a mental health organization called More Than You See, and a podcast also called More Than You See. So I'm so excited for you all to be here today. Oh my goodness, so many first timers. This is wonderful. Hi, Jamie, first time. Hi, Jeremy, first time. Awesome. Hi, Penny, or I don't know, Penny. I don't know if you're a first timer. So as I said before, um, I do these every other week. And because of that, I've got some regulars, which is awesome. Lisa, one of my regulars, and Leslie is one of my regulars. Lovely to see you all today as well. So the way that I like to run these is I kind of have a conversation topic that I'm going to kind of circle around. But if there's anything that you want to bring up or you want to address or you want us to discuss, feel free to pop it in the chat. As you can see, I can see these comments. We can put them up on the screen and we can just have a nice open dialogue. I think that it's really important to illustrate this is a community and we're all struggling through things together, and that's what we are all here for. So Camilla, hi from the UK. Lovely to see you. And Sean, lovely to see you. So because we have so many first timers, I might as well just give you guys a little bit of background because it also very much relates to the podcast episode that came out today. So about 2.5 years ago, goodness, I don't know how many years, because the pandemic makes everything seem like time is warped. So either 2.5 or 3.5 years ago, I don't remember. I went through a really, really deep depression and a really difficult time in my life. And as I was coming through that time, I decided to create my organization, More Than You See. And the reason that I wanted to create it was that some of the things that helped me through that really difficult time were not traditional mental health resources. Even though I do have an incredible therapist that I work with, there is also so many other things that helped me, like podcasts, TED Talks, books about our brains and how that works and all these sorts of things. Those were the things that like really helped me feel better. And so I decided that I wanted to create this organization to connect with everyone and to make everyone feel less alone. And that's what I have created. And that's why I also created a podcast that comes out on Mondays, and season 3 premiered today. And on these podcasts, I either talk to other actors, producer, like industry people about their mental health struggles, or I dive into topics just by myself, like the one that I did today. And thank you, Jamie. That's so kind. I really appreciate the shout out and the love. And as if Jamie, I think you're a first timer, you said, but as I've said multiple times on these lives, so many times I'll come on here because this is a regular thing for me every other week. But sometimes I'll come on here and be in such a difficult headspace myself. And whenever I come on here and check in with you all, it always makes me feel so much better and so much more um, just aligned with a like minded community. So I so appreciate you all being here with me today. And so the thing that the thing that my podcast was on today um, is my divorce. So November 8th, which is today, is actually, at least it's today in the US. I know that in other countries it is not necessarily, but today, November 8th, is my ex wedding anniversary. I used to be married, and it's when this was one of the things that led to this really difficult depression of mine. And so this day still has a lot of important meaning to me, even though I am no longer married to that person. And so my podcast episode today is about the three things that I learned from my divorce, or the three most important things that I learned from my divorce. And I strongly recommend that you go and listen to it, because it's not just about divorce, it's also about the things that we just learn from relationships ending. And this doesn't have to be a romantic relationship. This could also be a family relationship, a friendship, a work relationship. Like, there's so many different um, definitions or interpretations of what a relationship means. And when those things end, it can be really difficult. And that's basically what my podcast episode covers today. So you can find it on a lot of podcasting platforms. If you go to that link, you can go and check that out. And please let me know what you think. I'm very active on Instagram and Facebook and all the things, and I always love hearing from you all. So thank you, Vicky, for sharing a little bit about what you're going through right now. Vicky said, you popped up just in time. You're in a bad place. You should say still. You're trying to get hold of your therapist, but to no avail. You did listen and comment on your podcast this morning. You don't want to continue feeling so depressed, and you can't keep crying and trying to hide it. Thank you so much, Vicky, for opening up and being so honest with us today. I think that, if you want to share a little more about what you're feeling, I would be honored to hold that space for you. I think that sometimes it really is that we just have periods of our life where things are really difficult. I know that TMI for men in the audience, but get used to it. Whenever I'm like on my period that week, I don't get angry or anything like that. I just get very depressed. And I think that just illustrates the fact that our mental health is contributed by so many different things. And one of the biggest things that contributes to our mental health is our brain chemicals and our hormones, and how we are feeling right now based on those things. And I know that going into the holidays and going into winter, that has a huge impact on most people's mental health, because our days are getting shorter. It's getting colder, it's getting darker, and that's a really difficult place to be in, because at least here in the US, again, like, depending upon where you are, and depending upon what hemisphere you're in, you potentially could actually be going into summer. But at least in our northern hemisphere, where we're going into winter, it can be very difficult for us to feel, okay. And the depression that can come from this time of year is no joke. And it's not it's something that's definitely, a genuine aspect of our lives. And so, Vicky, I don't know if that's something that's contributing to your depression, but I certainly have felt that as well. And I think that there's also just we still have a lot of trauma that's happening in the world. We still have a lot of repercussions from the pandemic. And I think that most of us are not necessarily acknowledging how difficult the pandemic has been on our mental health. I mean, some of us are. I bet a lot of the people here in the community are, but so many people are not. And I think that it is so important to address the fact that that's okay if you're feeling if you're having a difficult time right now. It's completely okay. Leslie, thank you so much for those kind words, and hello, Colette. It's lovely to have you with us today. Um, so as I said, I my podcast episode today is about my divorce, and it's about what I learned from my divorce. And that's kind of what I wanted to talk about today as well, and kind of expand on the things that I talked about on the podcast. So you guys get like an extended version. Um, on the podcast, I talked about, one of the things that I talked about was how sometimes people are in our lives for a very specific purpose, and sometimes only for a very specific purpose and a very specific season in our life. I think that everyone can probably think about family or friends that have appeared in their life and have done something very important and impactful in their life, and then potentially have left their life in some capacity. And I think that it's just so important to learn from those periods of time, and really understand what those people brought to our lives in that capacity, and then be okay that maybe they aren't in our life anymore. And it's a really difficult thing to do, but I do think that that's definitely something that I learned from my divorce, because I'm still friendly with my ex-husband, but I also know that our goals for the future no longer aligned, and I really I'm grateful for the fact that that relationship has ended, because I have been allowed to like focus on what is important to me and my goals and my opportunities for my future. Lisa, thank you for sharing. Lisa says, I have chronic illness, so the pandemic didn't really change my life. I'm always in my apartment, barely to go out with pain and anxiety. Thank you, Lisa, so much for sharing that. I mean, I think that that's something that we have discussed before, Lisa, is the fact that for some people, the pandemic has actually made things easier in some capacity. And for some people, they feel that the pandemic has given them like new life in some ways, because there's so many things that have now become accessible that were not accessible before. Like Lisa, I don't know if you've ever like looked at this before, but there's all sorts of incredible different ways that you can like look at museums around the world. The All the different like streaming and like walkthrough, like 3D walkthrough tours of like museums and like the pyramids, and all of those sorts of things that were not set up before. And because of the pandemic, all of these different new opportunities have opened up to kind of see the world in a new place, which is, really pretty incredible. I'm absolutely not saying that it's not, difficult, but I do think that there's some benefits to this pandemic, very small ones, but a few. Lisa, I don't know, but I think so. Lisa just asked, I don't know, where do you go? If you Google, like if anyone else is listening and can throw some links up into the chat or suggest specific things. I know that a lot of museums, like in New York, in Washington D.C., like the Natural History Museum, the Louvre in Paris. I do think that there is a walkthrough of the pyramids. Like if you just type in like 3D walkthrough or like tour of put in a place, there's a lot of new things that are up that they've like built over the last couple of years, which is really cool during the pandemic. So that's something that I know that like I've gone and explored the Louvre before. And I have not been to Paris. At least I've not been to Paris in many, many years. So that's like a really a cool opportunity. But if anyone has explored something like that, please put it in the chat. And I'm also curious, I think that, Lisa, this brings up a really wonderful point of the fact that like, as we're going into the holidays, what are some of the things that we can look forward to, even if we're not traveling, like even if we are still going to be stuck in our apartments or not going to be doing things like in the more traditional way or some way that we would have done things in the past, or maybe things have not changed that much. Like what can we? Oh, my dog is coming to visit us, everyone. This is my dog. He is a little munchkin and pretty much my favorite being in the world and my like number one thing that helps me through my mental health struggles. So this is Phineas, everyone, if you've never met him before. So yeah, I'm curious, like how everyone is doing with thinking about the coming holidays, with Thanksgiving and Christmas and Hanukkah and Kwanzaa and everything, Kwanzaa and all that stuff. Yeah, so going back to the different topics that I, covered on my podcast today, not just do, and I think that this is also like not just do people come into our lives for a specific purpose in a specific season. Sometimes people come into our lives, again, it could be like a work colleague, it could be um, a friendship, it could be so many different things that kind of help us learn about ourselves and learn about the world in some capacity. And so I'm curious if anyone else has had this experience or knows something that they've learned, if anyone wants to share something that they've learned from their past relationships, because I think that is really, it's a really important thing to kind of acknowledge, the fact that we can learn so much even if someone is only in our lives for a few months or a few years or whatever. And I'm curious if anyone else has had that opportunity, and that experience. The second thing that I really learned from my divorce was the importance of being alone and the importance of being okay being alone. And I'm sure that other people can relate to that, especially during the pandemic. And I'm curious, Lisa, if this is something that resonates with you, is that, what are some of the benefits? Phineas is just giving you guys all of the looks today. Like what are some of the things that we are positives when it comes to living alone? Now, I live alone besides this little furry creature here, and it can be very isolating and difficult at times, but there's also some really wonderful aspects of living alone. And I'm curious if anyone has experienced that. I know that like things like I can there's always jokes about like, oh, you can like eat whatever you want, watch whatever you want, go to bed whenever you want, like all those things. They kind of make fun of them on television. But to be honest, especially during the pandemic, those were things that actually really did bring me a lot of joy, where it was like, I kind of can create my schedule in a really nice way. And I wouldn't have had that experience had I been living with someone else. So that was definitely something that I learned. And the importance of being okay being alone, and like being okay just like sitting in silence and sitting with yourself. I think that's really, really important. Thank you, Vicky, for sharing more about your experience. Vicky says, this has been an ongoing thing. You had to stop through therapy because of the pandemic, but you're trying to get back in. Oh, thank you. You're so sweet. I'm sorry I went through that with my ex. I admire my strength, honesty, bravery, and knowledge. Your mistake was not talking about this when you first experienced it. And you admire my bravery. Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it. Vicky, one of my regulars, always making me feel so warm and fuzzy. Yeah, I think that to be honest, Vicky, and this is something that I did talk about on my podcast today as well, is that that experience going through that divorce and also a recent relationship that I had really taught me, like, how important it was to sit in my feelings and to feel bad if I was feeling bad, um, and how bravery sometimes is just, like, breaking down and crying. Like, sometimes that is you being brave. It's just, like, allowing yourself to, like, feel all the feelings and feel really terrible, and, I think that previously I've done a lot of avoidance when it comes to processing relationships. And with these past 2 relationship breakups, my divorce and then a recent one, I have, really learned how to be okay when those feelings come up, and, um and then decide kind of like how I wanna process it. Like, do I wanna write about it? Do I wanna just cry? Do I wanna watch a show? Do I wanna whatever? And I think that that has been something that has really helped me, process all of this is just acknowledging that these feelings are gonna come and go, and it's perfectly okay to have, these feelings. Lisa, thank you for giving us a little more information. So Lisa says that she lives with her boyfriend. When you get really bad anxiety, you prefer to be by yourself. That's so valuable that you know that about yourself, Lisa. I think that one of the things that I'm always a huge proponent of is the importance of knowing yourself and knowing what you need in certain situations. And and I think that, like, the fact that you know that about yourself and you know that you need boundaries when you have really bad anxiety, that's great, and I really hope that you have the tools in order to communicate that with your boyfriend and that he is able to acknowledge that and not take it personally and understand that, and so like, honestly, I'm very, very, impressed by you for knowing that about yourself and being able to voice that, in this community, because that just shows a real self-awareness that I think is one of the biggest things that's so important with mental health is that self-awareness. And speaking of self-awareness, awareness, Chantal, thank you for being so vulnerable here. And this is another illustration of self-awareness. So Chantal says, "What if it's hard to deal with and you feel like nothing will be okay?" Chantal, can I tell you that I have 100% been there? I've been there in the past couple months, honestly. Um, yeah, a couple months ago, I was honestly feeling that way, and it was really, um, difficult to just, like, get through the day, and I completely understand that, and I think that the thing that helps me, and if anyone else wants to chime in and share what they do when they are feeling like this, I think the thing that helps me is that I always, if I'm feeling like that, I check in with myself and see if I've eaten something that day, and if I've drank water that day, and if I've gone outside that day. And before I decide to, like, if I'm feeling really shitty, if I'm feeling really depressed, I, like, make sure that I drink a glass of water, and make sure that I have eaten something, even honestly, even if it's just, like, a piece of bread or some nuts or, like, something, I try not to go straight for, like, a candy bar because 'cause that'll totally make your sugar, your insulin levels just, like, spike and then crash, which then can make you feel worse, but, honestly, sometimes if, like, that's the only thing that you wanna ingest, like, it's better to have something in your body than nothing, and then I go outside, and I will go outside for, like, a minimum of 5 minutes, and I'll tell myself that all I need to do is be outside for 5 minutes. If I decide after 5 minutes that I wanna come back inside, it's totally okay, I give myself that. I just know that after 5 minutes, I often feel better and want to stay outside. I wanna go for a walk, I wanna do something else to make myself feel, good and connected with the world in some capacity, and even if that excuse me, even if I'm feeling isolated, like, even if I go for a walk and I feel super depressed and I'm looking around at all the happy people that are walking in my neighborhood and I'm going, "Screw you for looking so happy," and I'm feeling so depressed, it's still, for me at least, makes me feel something, you know? Like, it makes me feel at least like I am maybe having a different, um reaction than just depression. Like if I'm having some kind of other feeling besides depression, I think that really does help me. And so, yeah, just like what Lisa says, that she takes her dog outside, it forces you to get out. Absolutely. I think that I'm exactly the same way. Lisa, like my dog is, as I said, my biggest mental health tool that I have, and it's because he forces me to go outside. And like I share on my podcast, the first episode of my podcast, I talk about I talk a little bit about my divorce and the depression that I went through, and I talk about how the thing that helped me through that period more than anything else was going for walks outside with my dog, going for hikes. And so, Chantal, when you're feeling like it's hard to deal with and nothing will be okay, the thing that I do is, again, make sure that I have a glass of water, that I eat something, and that I go outside. And it's just a wonderful reminder um, that I'm still here and that I'm still, living to, live another day, in whatever capacity. And sometimes it doesn't mean, I think that sometimes we get caught up on this idea that we have to like live each day to the fullest and like do, be so productive on each day and blah blah blah. I call bullshit on that. Like I truly feel that especially in this mental health community, if you just show up for yourself today and you do those three basic things of drink some water, eat some food, and go outside, and that's all you can accomplish today, that's amazing. That's amazing, and you should celebrate that. And maybe tomorrow you'll want to do something else and be productive, and maybe you won't, and that's okay too. I think that it's really important to just like give ourselves grace when we're going through difficult, depressive periods. And you don't have to know that it's going to be okay. You just have to know that you're just going to keep showing up for yourself and for your community, for the mighty community, for the other people on here who care about you, and sometimes that's all we can do. So, yeah. Um Vicky, I'm so sorry to hear that you have Graves' eye disease and it's hard to read for long periods because of the pain and double vision. So you listen more than reading or writing. I mean, Vicky, I think that this is like another example of how the pandemic has benefited us in some capacity, because I know that there's so many more audiobooks that are now available than were pre-pandemic. I know that, of course, audiobooks were already a very big thing, but I think that during the pandemic, so many people decided to voice their books if they were just as a paperback before, and they've now decided to really, voice them and um, turn them into real audiobooks, and that's like such a huge benefit, I think, because it does we need to be so much more aware of accessibility needs for everyone. And I think that that's something that the pandemic has brought a real awareness to, is that everyone has their own things that sometimes make life and living difficult. And um and it's really wonderful that this is like a gift that has been given to us in some capacity. So I hope that, I don't know if you're an audiobook person, but maybe that's something to look into. um the other thing that I want to talk about, and Chantal, this kind of goes back to what we were just talking about. Um, oh, Chantal, thank you so much for sharing a little more. Chantal just shared your best friend passed away September 7th, and you can't get through it. Chantal, I'm so sorry to hear that. That's just devastating, and um I have certainly lost very close friends of mine before, and I understand how painful that is, and um, how difficult it is to really grasp that. I think the thing to really focus on, as Leslie says, Leslie just shared that, so sorry for your immense loss, and this whole community um, is to really take it day by day. Like grief is such a grief of any kind, especially the death of someone, is really something where it's in stages. I don't know if you've really looked into the 5 stages of grief and all of the there's a lot of books on that. In fact, if you go to More Than You See, I know that I've shared books before about how to process grief. And but I also would say that if you're not ready to, if you don't want to get through it, that's an okay feeling too. Like if you still want to just feel all the feelings and feel this immense loss and not necessarily push through it and process it, like, that's okay too. September 7th, it's only a month ago, or it's a couple months ago, but it's still such a, um that would be such an incredibly difficult thing to get through, and so, whatever you're doing right now to process your loss is perfectly okay. And I think that, once you're ready to start processing it and to start working through everything, I strongly encourage you to, seek out a therapist or seek out some support in some capacity, and yeah, to like look for some resources like the Mighty, like my organization More Than You See, like the books, and there's so many different things that can assist in this journey. And Leslie just shared something really beautiful. She says, grief is not a sprint, it's a journey. It's not linear, it's on your own time and pace. It's so new. You're surrounding her with light. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. I think, yeah, I mean, I know that with my most recent like period of depression that was brought on by something in my life, like I get reminded all the time by my friends and by my therapist that some days I can feel like everything is perfectly okay. And some days I can feel like nothing is okay and nothing's ever going to be okay. And that's all fine. That's all, whatever you're feeling um is okay and completely understandable. And we're here for you. So thank you for showing up um for yourself in this capacity. Um, Leslie, thank you for, sharing this before. Leslie says, it's helpful for you to switch up a routine and move energy when you're spiraling, even if it's from one room to the next or turning into great music or doing meditation. Anything to temporarily alter the thought loops and painful physical patterns physically or emotionally has potential to help. Yes, it does. And Leslie, I know how much you are such a huge fan of all sorts of books on brain chemistry. You're a huge brain nerd like I am, and I think that it is so important to acknowledge this fact that, and this is where it can be uh this is where depression can be problematic, and I don't mean like the state of depression, but sometimes when we um just kind of like give ourselves to depression over prolonged periods of time, the reason why it's so difficult for us to break out of it is because those patterns become commonplace, and it's so easy to just like sit in the pain because it's the thing that we did the day before and it's the thing we did the day before that. And while there certainly is a space for that, I'm absolutely not saying that there's not. Um, Sometimes we do have to give ourselves a little bit of a kickstart and change our circumstances, change those patterns in order to force us um, to interact with the world in a new way. I know that when I was going through my really, bad depression, I like walking my dog. The reason that I started walking my dog, specifically in the mountains, because I started walking my dog every day in the mountains, was that I had a friend who said, choose one thing every day that will bring you happiness. And that's it, just one thing. And and do that consistently. And so for me, I realized that like not only being outside, but being outside really in nature was something that like made me really happy. And so that was why I started hiking with my dog every day, and I started listening to podcasts, and um that whole experience was catalyzed by someone encouraging me to step outside of my comfort zone and focus on happiness in some capacity. Um, and so, that forced me to rewire my brain in some way and develop a new routine, and that's what made me feel less alone and just get through that depressive period of my life. So that's kind of where I'll leave all of that. I think that's so important for us to all um kind of have those things sometimes. And that's why I have More Than You See, is so that you can really like build your mental health toolbox, build the books, the the music, the podcast, whatever it is that's going to help catalyze you out of those dark spaces. I think it's important to figure out those things now. That way there's when you're feeling so downtrodden and whatever, it kind of forces me out of that depressive state. And like Lisa is saying, like, this is such a wonderful example here. Lisa says, my dog makes me laugh and feel loved. I swear he distracts you when you're feeling depressed. He likes to steal random stuff like he's not supposed to have. Ugh, I love that so much. Yeah, absolutely. Lisa, I think that like it's so um like animals are such a beautiful way to help us through depressive episodes because they aren't necessarily like they're not necessarily depressed, so they still have their needs and their desire to play and be happy and go outside and all those things. And so it kind of like forces us to rewire our brain in order to interact with our animals in some capacity. So I think that that's really great. And Lisa says, and then when you're crying he licks my face. Absolutely, mine does that too. And I mean, it really is such a wonderful um aspect of having a dog. So I completely agree. Um, I think the third thing that I talk about on my podcast this week that has to do with my divorce is how strong I have become through all of the different trauma that I've experienced. Not just this divorce, but other trauma in my life, and how much that trauma has shaped me to who I am. And I'm so proud of myself, of the amount of trauma and the amount of heartbreak and stuff that I've experienced, and how it just makes me so much more available, and I feel like my capacity to like love and to like feel feelings is becomes bigger with every difficult experience. And of course, I don't want to go through difficult experiences. I would love to have that not be the thing that has been kind of dominating my life in some capacity, but I think that I have learned so much from my different relationships and the different trauma that I've been through, and it has informed me and helped me become the resilient person that I am, and I'm just so immensely grateful for that. Chantal, I love that you shared that your cat Dot is a cuddle bug, and when you're upset, he jumps onto your lap and headbutts you to make you feel better. Yeah, I mean, I think, animals are just the best. They're absolutely the most incredible thing to help us, get through traumatic times. I absolutely agree. How's everyone else feeling today? I know that we've got a couple weeks until Thanksgiving, and then we've got the other holidays coming up. How is everyone feeling and coping right now? And while I listen to get people's answers, I want to, just remind everyone that I do these talks every other week. So my next one of these conversations will be on the 22nd of November at 1 p.m. And I always do them here, and I always like to have these little conversations with you all. So I appreciate you all being here and having this conversation with me. Michelle, thank you for being so open and honest about this. Michelle is sharing that she has self harmed and feel out of control. The Mighty has just put up the, you know, National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. So if this is something that you feel like you need, I strongly encourage that you seek that out. But I have to say, the fact that you have come here and opened up yourself in this way, and shared, again, self-awareness is so incredibly important when it comes to mental health. And the fact that you are self-aware enough to see that you are to see that you are feeling out of control, like, that acknowledgement and that awareness is huge. And I want you to acknowledge that and to celebrate that for yourself. And I hope that you can find that you can utilize some of these resources and talk to someone about these things, because you're not alone. There's a lot of people out there who have very similar experiences, and I mean, myself included. And so that's something that I have certainly gone through before. And suicide is not something that we talk about enough. It's something that is a very real experience for so many people. There's way more people who have considered or who have thought about suicide before, and please know that you're not alone, and there is help out there for you. Lisa, thank you for sharing some more information about what's going on. You're stressed because you have some medical tests coming up. I'm so sorry to hear about that, but I have to say, like, it is incredible sometimes how much medical tests can stress us out, but sometimes the end result isn't as bad as we think they are. And I hope that that is the case for you, and that you get some reassurance and some solace through this experience. And we are here to, you know, be there for you throughout that experience. Trisha shares that you feel stressed, a lot of loss the past couple of days, and currently waiting for the call about another family member that will pass. I have 3 weeks already this week. Oh, Trisha, I'm so sorry. That's really, really difficult. I have lost a couple of family members this past year, and the idea of it all being, in such a short amount of time, must be numbing in some capacity. And that's really just so difficult. And I really appreciate you know showing up for yourself and sharing that with us here. Um i yeah, I have no words, and I'm so sorry. And as Vicky says, yeah, we're sending you prayers. And please remember to, like, do some self-care this week if you can. And self-care does not mean necessarily, I mean, it could mean taking a bath or doing a face mask or whatever. Like, that is a version of self-care, but that's not necessarily what I'm referring to here. I'm referring to just, like, taking 5 minutes for yourself and going for a walk, like, whatever you need in order to remind yourself that you and your feelings are also valuable, and that you deserve to maintain your self-awareness and sanity, and just, like, all of your feelings right now. um I hope that you can, look out for yourself in some capacity, because that's super, super important. And yeah, Trisha says, it's all happening at once. I'm sure that's just it's grief is never easy. And then when there's grief piled on top of grief, it's makes things even more difficult. Um, but I have to say that I think that it's so wonderful that you've shown up for yourself today. Like, this is kind of a version of self-care, like checking in with the Mighty community, checking in with me. I just so appreciate you being here today. Trisha is another one of my regulars. I recognize you, Trisha, and ouch, just kicked myself. And I really appreciate you being here with us today. So thank you for showing up for yourself. Um we've got about 10 minutes left, so I'm curious if anyone else has any other check-ins that they want to do, just like sharing something about themselves and about how they're feeling in the world today. Um, as I said, I have a mental health podcast if you've never met me before, and it's called More Than You See. And I strongly encourage you to check it out. There's a lot of really incredible episodes on there, not just with me, but with other people that I've interviewed before. And please let me know what you think. You can leave me a voice message, and I'll put it up on the podcast in the future. And Lisa, thank you so much for being here today and for being so open and vulnerable. I, these conversations are only as helpful as you all are, in our conversation and our sharing, because I know that I feel less alone when everyone else, is sharing their experience. And so I just so appreciate you showing up for yourself today, Lisa. Hi, Rick. Rick is one of our regulars as well. And Rick, I believed I saw that you're moving. My goodness, that is a whole other bag of worms. I hope that it's going well. Yeah, so my next live is the 22nd, which is the Monday before Thanksgiving. And so on that conversation, we're actually going to be talking about family and how to cope with family members, because I think that we're all going to need it in some capacity. We can love our family or have conflict with our family or whatever, and yet we still have to, you know, show up for these holidays, or not. Maybe you're someone who has built really strong boundaries, so you're not going to be seeing your family, and instead you're going to be celebrate or like doing a Thanksgiving with a chosen family. Whatever way you are doing your family gatherings in a couple weeks, that's what I want to talk about on Monday the 22nd, because I think that we're all going to need a little bit of a check-in, and a little bit of just a little bit of a check-in before we all dive into that conversation, because my goodness, who knows. And yeah, Lord says family drama. Absolutely, I completely agree. Well, I since no one else has any particular thoughts, I will leave you all today. It was so wonderful to have this conversation with you all again. And as I've said, I will be back on Monday, the 22nd at 1 p.m. I hope that everyone is feeling a little bit better, a little bit lighter, a little bit more connected to the community after this conversation. Again, I have a podcast and I have a Instagram. I'm always open to having conversations with everyone, so please let me know what you think, and connect with me on there, because I run the Instagram, and it's always wonderful to connect with the community. So I appreciate you all for being here today. Oh, good, Chantal. I'm so glad that you feel better. And please, join us again. It really is wonderful to connect with you all. And as I said before, I've certainly had very, very difficult days, and I've come on here and felt better. So I'm glad that it did do that same thing for you. Vicky, thank you so much for saying that. I am so glad to hear that this time makes things better for you. Yes, I will see you in 2 weeks. And yeah, if anyone needs me from now until 2 weeks, connect with me on Instagram. Listen to the podcast next week, because there will be another podcast episode next week. And be kind to yourself and give yourself grace over the next 2 weeks. And I will see you on November 22nd at 1 p.m.